Welcome to season 3 premiere of Conversations of the Heart. I am Terrence Tillman, aka T-Till, and we have a special guest, an esteemed guest, Mr. Sylvester McNutt III. He is a 9-time author, a speaker, and he is also the host of the Free Your Energy podcast. And he has just released an incredible book called Loving Yourself Properly. He has been so gracious enough to stop in here and to have this particular conversation surrounding boundaries, healing, and creating safe spaces. And we're going to get into all of that. But I just want to say thank you and introduce this incredible guest, Mr. Sylvester McNutt III. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. So before we dive in, just kind of tell the listeners more about yourself, where you're from, what got you into writing. You're very popular on Instagram. You have amazing quotes. So just tell me just a little bit about you and what you do and where they can find you.
Yeah, so I began writing as a curiosity. Growing up in a family system where I had my mother and father in the home, and they were both very loving and smart and very disciplined, and they expected a lot out of me and my brother and sister. It was a great home to grow up in until alcohol came into play, and they became alcoholics. And obviously, when you tell a story like that, that transition, there's a lot that goes on in that transition.
Right.
And that transition for them was, their late 20s, early 30s. That transition for me was me being a kid during my childhood. And so the consequence of their transition is I got to learn a lot about trauma, abuse, love. It's interesting. We talk about generational curses, but there's more than that. There's generational curses and there's generational blessings and opportunities, and you get both. You get both. To the degree to which you get both varies, obviously, and then obviously how you respond to the degree of them is, dependent upon you and your personality, perspective, and mindset. And so for me, when it happened, to go from a home where it's full of love, I remember being in the park with my dad, and running the kites and chasing geese and playing football and basketball with them. I remember playing cards with my mom and just having this like beautiful connection and relationship with her. To have a family structure where it's safe and there's love and there's harmony, and then to have that shift to the total opposite, for me, it just sparked a question of why did this happen? And at a young age, preteen, you don't have the capacity to understand. But I had the capacity for the curiosity that existed inside of me. And so I turned to writing as what we call a coping mechanism.
Yep.
It was a coping mechanism to help me get off of my chest the thoughts and ideas of the observations that were going on in my home. And so that was the origin. And it honestly just evolved from there to what it is today.
Wow, it's amazing. And I encourage everyone to go out and please get his latest book. I got it. It's called Loving Yourself Properly. It's an amazing book, and you'll learn a lot from it. You probably get emotional from it, and a lot of people will be able to relate to it. So definitely just go out there and go pick that up. And where can they purchase this book?
Loving Yourself Properly and all my other books can be found on Amazon. There's an audio book that I recorded myself, which was an interesting journey because as I was recording the audiobook, I got COVID in the middle.
Whoa.
And yeah, so it was funny. I didn't have COVID at any other point during the pandemic, but right when I had to have my book deadline, I had to record the audiobook. That's when I got COVID.
Wow.
So, I had to get through that. And, also on my website is sylvestermcnutt.net. Everything is on there as well.
Perfect. So one of my favorites so far, because I'm still going through your book, but one of my favorite excerpts from your book is about boundaries. And you say, like, if you have to set boundaries, one of the best phrases you can use is no, I do not accept that. And another one is, I cannot help you. Having clear boundaries helps you be honest to your capabilities and limits. Having boundaries is all about self-love and self-respect. And I thought that was very profound because a lot of us, we have problems setting boundaries, right, with people. especially, family. There's a lot of guilt there. I can't say no to family. I have to go to this event. I have to go to that event. I have to help this person and that person, right? And I find that in a lot of situations, it leaves us kind of depleted in a lot of ways because we kind of feel forced to kind of answer and be there for everyone, right? Sometimes at the cost of ourselves, right? So when it comes to boundaries, how do you even start, right, going about setting boundaries? Because when I have conversations with people, they're like, man, how do I even go about setting boundaries with family? Because that's so close. With other people, it could be a little bit easier, but with family, it's just like, I don't know where to start.
Well, the first thing we have to do is just detach from the story, because the story of us not setting boundaries is the reason that we're not doing it now, currently. So we have to detach from our prior self, our past self, and just see ourselves as this present version, who we are today in this moment.
Mm,
And what you are in this moment is a person experiencing an inner conflict. And that inner conflict is you want to set a boundary, and maybe we don't even maybe boundary isn't the language that works for you. Maybe it's you just want to be honest. Maybe you just want to speak up. Maybe you want a closer connection. Maybe you want more integrity in a relationship you have with
mm,
someone. Or maybe for you, it literally is you need a boundary. Okay. And so what we have to do is recognize that in this present moment, we have a present inner conflict. Now, here's the question. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm just going to ask you this question. Who is going to solve your inner conflict? And when you ask yourself that question, there is only one possible answer. It's not your mom. It's not the guy at the bodega down the street from you. Okay. There's nobody else in this world who will solve your inner conflict, with the exception of, if we're asking a toddler, because then a toddler is going to turn to their parents because
right.
that's the parent as a caregiver, that's their role. But if we are talking about a full-fledged, capable adult, the answer is you.
Mm,
And so you have to ask yourself, okay, am I willing to take my power back? Am I willing to reclaim my life?
mm,
Am I willing to step into my wholeness? Because every single day that I make a choice to ignore what I'm feeling, to ignore what I'm thinking, to ignore my intuition is telling me, hey, this does not feel good. I need to speak up on this. And I choose to ignore that. I am choosing to minimize myself. I'm choosing to minimize my power and my voice. And what are the consequences of that? Well, it's resentment. It might be hate. It might be feeling small. It might be feeling played. It might be feeling used and abused. And my question is, how long can you survive like that?
mm,
When you have the option available to you to thrive, to be in healthy relationships that feel good, where there's clarity, right? When you have that option available to you, why would you choose the option of, I am going to continue the relationship pattern that does not make me happy, that doesn't bring me any bliss, that actually brings me into a descent? And so the question is, how do I set a boundary? You have to reclaim it within inside of yourself that you're worthy of it.
mm,
That's step one. Then step two, if we're talking about from the communication model standpoint, you have to communicate clearly what your boundary is. Now, the question is, well, what if it's my mom? What if it's my dad? That doesn't mean anything.
mm,
It doesn't matter who it is. What matters is you have an inner conflict because another person around you is putting you in a situation that is asking you to compromise yourself, compromise your energy, your bank account, your ability, whatever it may be. Your duty is to speak up. That doesn't mean scream. That doesn't mean yell. That doesn't mean, oh, you better respect my boundary, or I'm gonna do this. You don't threaten people when you're setting boundaries. You don't have to do that.
mm.
You can be cool, calm, and collected. And you can just honestly look a person right in their eyes and say, no, I cannot do that. Hey, I know you just got paid, you make more money than me. So can you just help me, $120 till I can't help you with that.
Mm.
Yeah, but I just need to get this. I can't help you with that. Okay, so how do you practice your boundaries? Because you get in a situation where you know ahead of time, you're going to say to yourself, this is my new boundary with this person. They always put me in this situation. So I'm going to say X, Y, Z. Okay, but then you get in the situation and you freeze. Okay, so the reason that you freeze is because you are in the habit of going back to the old behavior. See, life is about patterns. So you want to repeat the pattern you're used to, where you silence yourself, where you choose codependency, where you choose a lesser, minimized version of yourself. But the reason you're freezing is because in that moment, you're actually starting to listen to yourself. Because now you're listening to yourself and you're saying, hey, no, don't do, hey, don't agree to that. Hey, stop that. Hey, that's the old you. And so you freeze. It's almost like a computer that's doing too much work. So you freeze for a second because you're fighting between your old self and who you want to be in this future. Okay, so what practical strategy can you use? You can use a strategy called visualization. So what you'll do is for the next 14 days, you know what? Double time it. For the next 28 days, when you wake up in the morning, you're going to go into the mirror and you're going to use affirmations. What are affirmations? I am. They're phrases that just affirm a state of being. And so you go look in the mirror and what do you say? Well, your weakness at this moment is setting boundaries. So you're going to look yourself in the mirror and for 30 seconds, you're going to speak life into yourself. I am good at setting boundaries. I set boundaries that give me clear relationships. I will set the boundary with my mother. Why? Because I love her and she loves me and I need her to respect me. You fill it in for your story. So you practice this every morning for the next 28 days. And as a consequence of affirming your boundaries, affirming your voice, affirming the full version of you, those boundaries will come into play in your relationships. Now, last thing I'm going to say on boundaries is this. Look at boundaries. There's two ways you can look at it. You can look at it like a wall, and boundaries like a wall are literally meant to keep people out. But in the relationships where we love people and we care about them and we just want the interaction to go a little bit differently, where we just need to be respected, we just need to be heard and understood, our boundaries are not walls, they are doors. And all doors can be opened and closed. And so when you're setting a new boundary with someone in the relationship, you're inviting them into your house to interact with you in a very particular way. And so it's important to remember that, someone who's just outright trying to cause you harm, yeah, you set a wall boundary with them. Like, hey, I stay away from those people. No, we're not going over there because, okay. But with the family members, with husband, with wife, with people we really care about, it's not a wall. We're not trying to keep them out. In fact, the reason that we're creating the boundary is because we seek more intimacy. We seek more connection. But we need them to go through our door. Because if you go through our door, then that's how I know I'm safe with you and I can be myself.
And that's powerful, to go through the door, because most people feel like a boundary is the closed part, where it's just where like we're apart and I'm not going to talk to you and that's it. But it doesn't have to be so open and closed, like you said. And that was the perfect way to say it. It's a door, especially when it comes to your loved ones. And when I speak to people, that's exactly what they say. I love these people, but they don't. Whenever we get around each other, it's arguments, it's strife, right? It's stress. It's just a lot of just different things for whatever those dynamics are. And it's like, I just need a break. But like, how do I tell them that I need that, right? Without being offensive, right? And for a lot of us, we're not comfortable with saying no. Even I think for me, I'm 37, right? And last year was the first year I was ever comfortable with saying no. That's a long time, and I just learned the freedom in that, and because especially as men, like, you want to be problem solvers, you want to be there for everybody, you want to be that person for everybody. And saying no for me was hard because of the disappointment that I would know would occur in everybody else. So I always said yes. And then last year, something clicked within me, and I just said, I don't have it to give it. I don't. And I knew I was at my wit's end with certain things, and just my mental health, my emotional health. I said, I don't have it. Right. And I had to say no. Right. And in doing so, I was like, man, like, that was one of the most freeing things that I think I've ever done. Yet it's so simple, but it was one of the hardest things though, just to say two little letters, and that's just no. Um, and what my mom always used to say is, I mean, growing up is they'll find a way, right? They'll always find a way to get it done with or without you, but you always feel like you have to be the one. And I think that's for us. It's, I don't know if it's a superhero complex, it's just it's guilt or a mixture of everything that we feel like we have to be everything to everybody. Um, but you're right though. Saying no, right? I cannot do that. And no, I can't accept that. Like that's perfect. And that's why when I read this excerpt from your book about no, I do not accept that. Right. Like that to me, I was just like that's where I was at last year, and more people need to see that, and more people need to understand that. So I appreciate you breaking that down for us. Appreciate it. So when it comes to safe spaces, right, I'm a big proponent of creating safe spaces, especially for family, of course, and you and your could be your significant other, whatever the case is. But I'm also, especially for men, you know um for a lot of us, we suffer in silence, for years, and you would probably know this better than a lot of people, but for a lot of us, we don't have that space where we can go to be vulnerable. And to me, vulnerability is the key to healing. It's the key to forgiveness. It's just the key to a lot of just various different things in our lives. So when it comes to safe spaces, I try to make it a point to create safe spaces for the men that I meet in my life, whether that be my brother, my guy friends. Like, you need to talk. And it's easy to, go out with your friends, party with your friends, watch Super Bowl, sporting events, basketball games with your friends, drink with your friends, drink with your boys, right? Like, that's what we do. We go to the barbershop, all that stuff, right? But when it comes to real life issues, there's no safe spaces. And the person that you're partying with every single weekend could be going through suicidal thoughts, mental health issues, and you'll never know it because they're with you like this, partying and doing all this with you, but they go back home and cry and want to take their life, right? So when it comes to creating safe spaces, for anybody, but especially us men, right? Like, what is your process for creating safe spaces for the people around you, and how important do you think that is for us?
Whatever you seek in life, you have to be a place of welcome for it. It's so interesting to me when I hear people say things like, there's just no more real people anymore. It's like, well, you're actually speaking up on your own reality.
Mm.
It's like, oh, there's no good man, right? That's your reality. That's not actually the reality. That's your personal reality. That's your personality. You have developed a life that is a mirror of what you're saying. And so whatever we seek, we have to be a home for it. We have to make that for other people, And so when we speak of like making a safe space, we ourselves have to be a safe space for other people, because the thing that we want, we're not going to just go out in the world and find it. We have to be it. So, in my world, I'm in a men's group. We meet once a week, and we talk about every subject, every subject. We talk about masculinity. We talked about different things in the news. Um, we talk about how we can integrate our different emotions and stories. We support each other as we go through. Like, one of the guys in the group, his mom just had a stroke this weekend. So he flew back home to be with her. So we're reaching out to him every day. Hey, how can we support you? How can we show up for you? What do you need? Another one of the guys in the group, he just had a podcast where he broke a story about this guy that was, abusing women essentially. And so I texted him last night, like, it's brave of you to do that. Let me know if you need support, how I can show up for you. So, in our 30s, that's kind of the goal there, is to create like these integrated spaces where, like you say, like, we need to be able to have every conversation. And perfect example, I went out with a group of guys this weekend. First time I've been to the club in like 3 years, man. It was interesting. And I'm sober. I don't drink. So
It's different. Oh,
yeah.
no.
So
Okay.
I'm over here like I'm buying bottles and stuff. I don't even drink. I'm just I'm an introvert, so I need the table because I can't just be walking around the club getting bumped by all these people. So
Right.
so they're like, y'all want to get a table? I'm like, yeah, we need a table because I can't just be out here, everybody sweating and stuff. And, then if you're around people who are drinking, then, people get lost. It's just a lot going on,
Yeah.
So like I'm in the club with these guys. We went to lunch, we went to dinner, like we were just together all day. And the whole day, we're having these real conversations, about mental health, entrepreneurship, how's your family doing? Like very, very real conversation. And so for me personally, it's a requirement. Like you can't just be my party friend. I can't just, no, we need to be able to have all the conversations. If you're going to come to me and ask me, who's better, LeBron or Kobe or Mike, cool, we can do that. But also when I say, brother, how are you doing? I need an honest, real answer from you. And if you don't give me that, I'm gonna invite you to that. I'm gonna ask you again. So how are you doing? I'll give you an example. When we went out, I was very disappointed in one of the guys that I went out with because he decided to drive home drunk. Now, from my origin story, my dad got a DUI when I was a young kid, and that's one of the catalysts to our family breaking up. So for me, I take drinking and driving very seriously. And again, I'm sober. I don't drink at this point in life. I don't drink. Maybe one day, but not right now.
Right.
So as everyone's dispersing, people are trying to get Ubers. People are, and so I'm checking on because I know I'm about to get home safely. That's one of my rules. If I go out, I have to get home safely. That's a rule. And so I said, hey man, how are you gonna get home? He's like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna drive. And I was like, no, the fuck you're not. Give me a second to figure out where, I was about to call a Uber for him.
Right.
So there was like, a lot of people in our group. We had a big group. So, I'm sitting here getting everybody situated. And next thing I know, he's gone. He's gone. And so I call him. I leave him a voicemail. I text him, no response. No response because he knew what was going to happen. He knew what I was going to say.
Right.
So, I finally get home. I finally got everybody else home, got everybody else in their Ubers. And the next day I get a text from him and he's just like, hey man, I just want you to know I'm really sorry. Like I have to be better. And so it's in these moments when we're talking about safe spaces, it's in these moments where we have to make sure that we're showing up as our full self. Because I could just say, okay, I accept your apology. That's great. But on the inside, I was furious.
Right.
Because he's too smart to make decisions like this. He has too much going for himself to make decisions like this. He has too many people counting on him to make decisions like this. So a part of creating safe spaces for people is inviting them in there and inviting them to come up to their highest level. And I said, he said, I know what I have to do to get better. I said, what do you have to do? Like, don't just apologize.
Right.
Don't just, no. What do you have to do? He goes, I need to stop drinking. And I say, you don't have to stop drinking to have fun. You don't have to stop drinking to get better. I said, but what you do need is a playbook of decisions that you're going to make when you do drink. And when drinking comes up, the second you take a drink, your instant play needs to be, all right, I'm getting an Uber or I'm getting a hotel. And it's so funny that people who are drinking and driving are often people who can afford the Uber, who can afford the cab, and in this or can afford, a ride home or a hotel. And so I met him with an invitation to show me his best self. And then in the next message, we were texting. The next text, I told him it was more soft, it was more gentle, it was more, hey, bro, whatever type of support you need. You need to let me know. Don't just text me. Don't just talk. If you need help, call me. So that it's holding that like masculine energy of like, okay, show me what you're going to do.
Right.
And also holding that space like you made a mistake. You owned up to it. Now, if I can help you, I can help you.
Right.
And that's the other part of safe spaces too, is like, we need help, and so we got to make sure that we're inviting people to be better, to be their best, but we also got to understand people will struggle. And so it's like, how do I show up for you? How do I support you? Is a big question that we ask in our men's group. And I ask all the men that I know is like, how do I support you in this moment? So
and
I
that's
hope that answered it.
Oh no, 200%. And what you said is powerful, because there's an accountability piece, right? And then there's a grace too. There's a grace that goes along with that as well, because we are imperfect people. We're not perfect. We're gonna make mistakes, but at the same time, is especially as men, it's like, hey, listen, you did mess up, and you acknowledge that you messed up, which is great. But now, what's the next step after that, right? Because we don't want to lose you, right? Like we don't want to read one day or like, oh, so and so got dead in a car accident, right? Or is in the hospital, or God forbid killed somebody else, right?
Right.
Because that happened to a friend of mine. He got killed by a drunk driver, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are things that do happen often. And sometimes when you've gotten away with things all the time, then
Exactly.
you start to believe, you know what, it's never going to be me. It's never going to be me, until it is you, right, in this particular situation. And I do like that you're in a men's group, and and I encourage a lot of us out there, especially us, Black men, to be in these men's groups, and to be able to find one in your area, because it's amazing. When I would go out and do speaking of events and things like that, when I would do women events for women, people, I mean, the women would come out. They would come out, and I'd be like, wow, this is amazing. And one day,
Mm-hmm.
I did a men's event, and when the women were in the other room, the raws were there. Oh my, like they were in there, and my group was just, it was like eight of us,
Right.
and I'm like, man, so it's just something that we do need, and it's hard for sometimes for men to be able to communicate too. I think that's another reason why men don't do the groups, and sometimes they don't like talking about various different things. It's that communication piece, right? Because men were, when we grew up, it was like, don't talk, don't communicate, that's what women do, right? And stop acting like a, and these are the things that we were just forced down our throats, right? But then when you turn around and you're 25, 30, 35 years old, everybody is looking at you and says, well, why don't you know how to talk? Why don't you know how to communicate? Why don't you know how to communicate your feelings and emotions? And it's just like, but you told us that that's not what men do. But now when we're older, this is what a man is supposed to do, and this is what a man is supposed to be. So I think a lot of it also starts when we're younger. It's also trying to get to the younger generation of young men too, to let them know the complete opposite of what we were told, right?
Yeah, but our responsibility isn't like it is. It is to tell them that it's okay to be yourself and to be honest and to be able to communicate and be
Mhm.
vulnerable. But it's more important that we begin to model that versus just saying do this. It's
Right.
kind of like I remember growing up in a Christian household, and I remember the hypocrisy that I would observe is
Mm.
on Sunday morning between the hours of 9 and 11, everyone's perfect. You guys are praising God and all of these things. But the rest of the week, the behaviors I saw didn't align with what you were preaching on Sunday morning. And it's just hypocrisy. So for us who are in our 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s, what we have to do is integrate the things that we want to give to the younger generation
Mhm.
and model it, and it really
Mhm.
doesn't have to ever be said. It just needs to be modeled, because just like you watched younger men, older men when you were younger, they're doing the same thing with us. I have a son.
Mhm.
And so for me, I am very mindful of what I say, but he watches everything. He
Mhm.
watches everything I do. So
Mhm.
modeling is way more important than what you say.
Mhm. And I mean, it's like the old saying, right? The actions speak louder than the words, right? um, which is good. And giving, well, and I also do believe, like you have a son, right? So it's just giving him, right, the permission to be authentically him and to express, right? I think that's also super important too, right? It's just because, lucky for me, I was blessed enough to be raised by, both parents who wanted me to be authentically me and to express myself, and the communication piece. And they taught me, listen, communication is going to be the key to life. In any in any interaction, whether it be business, relationships, like you've got to be able to express yourself in a healthy way, not always in an angry way. And I find that it seems like anger is the only expression that's acceptable for a man to express, like it's normal, right? But sadness or, you know, other things, emotions, tears and things like that, it's like that's not what men do. But anger is perfectly okay, right? But you know, I think that you know, you are an example and you are doing an amazing job. And if you have a son and you have a son and he's modeling and you're modeling for him, he's gonna be an amazing man when he grows up. So because he has a great example in you. Um, which brings me to men, men and vulnerability. This is always a topic for me because I think it's super important for us to, as men, to talk about vulnerability, right? And to be able to express vulnerability. And it's like for me, I don't have children yet. But for me, the one thing I think that if I was blessed with a son, the one thing I would express to him and like you said, show him, you know, is the vulnerable side, right? You know, my dad, God bless his soul, he was a great man and mirrored him in action and everything. He was compassionate, but the one thing was when it came to affection, right? He was an Army guy. You know, you shake my hand like a man. There weren't any hugs. There weren't any things like that. It was very just that's what we do, right? And I think the vulnerability piece for me and what I would do differently is make sure that my son will get the hugs, right? And let him know that you know he's loved in a different way, right? Um, so when it comes to men and vulnerability, where do you see the area of opportunity for us to kind of change the tide when it comes to the talking piece of vulnerability?
Yeah, that's a big question. First, I just want to acknowledge your vulnerability and sharing, the pieces about your dad. I relate to that. My dad was also in the army, so up at 6 a.m. get to work. It wasn't like a hug or a kiss, like, "Hey, hope you have a good day at school." It was like, "Did you make your bed? Are your shoes tucked in?" Like it was more about discipline than it was about love. So
Mhm.
I totally relate to that. I would say that the question, at least when I'm thinking of it in this moment, is more of a past, present, and future kind of answer.
Mhm.
So it's like if you were to look into your past and look into your family system, is there a space for you to forgive your parents? Just acknowledging that they probably did the best that they could with the situation and information that they had at that time.
Mhm.
And so, I know it's easy to resent and be against your parents because it's like, oh, they didn't care about me. Well, they probably did. They probably did. They probably cared about you as much as they could.
Mhm.
And just given their times and what they were up against, they probably showed up for you the best that they could,
Mhm.
and that may not be true for everybody, but for some people that may be true, and
Right.
finding healing in that. And so in the present, I feel like um, there is a reclamation of power when you can kind of just forgive your family system, forgive your parents,
Mhm.
but then also when you're proactive, right? Because if I say, go get the bag, go get money, everyone is like, oh, well, I need money. Or why do you need money? Oh, because, I got to pay rent or mortgage. I got to get food and, I want to go to the club and whatever else you guys are seeking, what you're desiring.
Mhm.
But what if I told you that, the reason that you're chasing money, you're looking for money is because of security? And you would say, okay, that's I accept that.
Mhm.
What if I said that touching your vulnerability is also going to help you feel more secure?
Mhm.
Now, at first, you're going to be like, well, no, I'm not buying that. And then I'm going to say,
Mhm.
well, you haven't been vulnerable, so you don't really know. And
Right.
then my invitation would be, well, in the present moment, I want you to try. Like, you will be more secure. And when you're more secure, you're less angry. This is what you talked about, anger.
Mhm.
You're a lot less angry when you're very secure in who you are, when you're
Mhm.
very secure in who is showing up. When you go talk to a woman and she rejects you, instead of your reaction being, man, F you,
Mhm.
why are you acting that way? It's because you're small. It's because you're immature. It's because you're not integrated. It's because you are a little boy in a grown man's body.
Mhm.
But when you go approach a woman and she's like, oh yeah, I'm not interested. When you're securing yourself, you say, all right, thank you for your time. Have a good day. and you go on to the next. Why? Because when you're securing yourself, you're in abundance mindset.
Mm.
You're not coming from a hurt place. You're in a healed energy. Healed masculine energy is the energy that runs the world, that needs to run the world. The hurt masculine energy, it'll never go away, but that is what we are trying to counterbalance.
Mm.
I go to the gym every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Mm-hmm.
I go to the gym for about 2 hours in the morning. And when I go in there, all of the masculine energy that I got to get out, all the cursing, all the slamming weights, I go in there and get it out. I really want to invite men to get in the gym, get in the best shape of your life. We're talking about vulnerability.
Mm.
I need to see you pushing 315 on the bench press. I need to see you pushing 315 on the squat. When we talk about vulnerability, I need to see you stretching and opening up your hips, where you keep your stress, where you keep your trauma and pain. You have tight hips, you have tight glutes, you have your shoulders are rounded because you're on your phone all day, because you're on your computer. You really want to be vulnerable, open up your posture. Stop sitting so much. I need you to stand. I need you to breathe. I need you to get connected through meditation. I do meditation every day. Why? Because the world is triggering.
It is.
And so you have a choice. You walk around in this world and let people trigger you, which means they control you. Or you get grounded and you get centered. You go ask the average black man right now, hey, if a white man walks up to you right now and says the N-word, what are you doing? Now, we know that word is triggering. We know that this is a hot topic. We know that pretty much every answer is going to be, oh, I'm going to do this and da-da-da-da-da. And to be fully transparent, I've done all the things that you would think of. That was a lesser, less integrated, less regulated version of me. If that was to happen to me now, my invitation to him would be, please get out of my face. He will get a calm response from me. Get out of my face. His invitation would be to respect the boundary of where I am. Just leave me alone. That's all I'm asking. Just leave me alone. My initial response will not be, let's fight. Let me prove him a lesson. Let me slap him. No, because my trigger doesn't work that way. Now change the situation. Someone walks up to me and they put their hands on me. Okay, well, that's a different situation. You've changed the situation now. Now it's not a trigger. It's self-defense. I have to defend myself. That's a different situation. You ask the average man where they want to be in, a year. I hate the question when people are like, where do you want to be in 5 years? I can't even think about like 5 days. It's too far. It's too long for me. But a year, you ask them where they want to be in a year. They're going to talk to you about their career. Okay. And we're taught to seek safety through the career. And what I hope to do with just my work in general and everything that I'm representing is to teach people that you can find safety in nature. You can find safety in seeing how strong you can be. Go run 10 miles, go lift, go swim. I'm a former professional athlete. I want people to reconnect with physical fitness, with movement, for all the benefits, for all the skeletal benefits, the psychological benefits, everything, the hormonal balancing of your testosterone, all of that. So in conclusion, to be vulnerable, get off the couch, get off social media, go for a walk, read some books like you're doing, listen to podcasts like this, start a men's group, and invite yourself to your highest version. And will it be easy? No. But is it necessary? 100%.
I couldn't say it better myself. And that is exactly just the kind of response that we need, right? Because vulnerability is multifaceted, right? It looks different for everybody, especially men. And I love the example that you gave. If somebody did, walk upon you and said the N-word, what would your response be? And I would probably say 9.5 times out of 10, we know what that response is, it is going to be. But do you have the fortitude, of restraint, right? Right. Because responding in that other way is only going to get you in trouble, right? It's only going to get you possibly locked up.
I mean, you've seen it over and over again in every sport. Every sport, you see the linemen wrestling with each other, one lineman to push the other guy, and then the second guy who hits, the ref now comes in with a flag. And then he's like, oh, you didn't see him hit me first? No, they never do. So like true power is restraint. How do you gain restraint in a moment when you're experiencing an elevated emotion? See, someone walking up to you and using a word that is culturally supposed to trigger you is supposed to elicit an elevated emotion out of you. Anger, sadness, all these emotions. And when people get in elevated emotions, they are typically not in control. So how do you control yourself when you are experiencing an elevated emotion? Well, there's only one way.
Breathe.
You breathe. Breathing brings you back to control. It brings you out of every elevated emotion. It brings you back to your body. It brings you to unison. Now, when you come to this non-elevated emotion, now you have a level head. Now you have the chance to tell this person, I don't know what your goal is, but just please leave me alone. I'm asking for peace. Whatever, however you want to respond to them.
Right. And these are things that can be taken into relationships too. Because there's, there'll be times where you'll have heated arguments and people will try to say things to, people know how to press your buttons. And when people, and the funny thing that you just said, it just kind of clicked into my mind too, when every significant other knows how to press buttons, right? And say certain things that's going to trigger you, right? Because you're not in control of certain things, right? So what happens when you take that trigger away, right? You tend to take their power away from them, right? Because now we need to get back on topic to whatever that issue was that we really had and get back there to start solving these issues, right? Or conflict resolution, right? Because, throwing shots in all of those things, that doesn't solve issues. It has nothing to do with conflict resolution, right? And what you said can save a lot of households too, because if both people practice restraint, right, and are at peace, it'll be more about conflict resolution than me trying to hurt you.
I have a very controversial opinion. I don't believe that we should argue in relationships. I don't. That was modeled for me growing up. I saw my mother and father argue all the time, and nothing ever happened. So, as part of my journey, when I went to Northern Illinois University, I studied communications. I was very curious, like what the communication model is and how it worked, and how we played our different roles in it. And so, I've been my partner for 6 or 7 years, and I would be lying if I would say that we've never ever had an argument. Of course we have.
Right.
It's happened once or twice in a 7-year period, and part of the reason is because we've integrated some I won't even call them rules. I don't want to call them boundaries. I want to just call them practices that make it safe for us to speak and communicate when there is an elevated emotion. Now, in my heart, privately, I want to tell every man that I ever come across, you shouldn't be arguing with your woman. I know that could come off a certain way, and I don't really care if it comes off a certain way, because what I care about is you shouldn't be arguing with your woman. You 100%, this is just my opinion for me.
Okay.
This is what I want to tell my close guys. What we should be doing is understanding the communication model. And I'll break it down for you. So in communication, you have a sender and you have a receiver. You have two people in a communication model typically. Me and you are talking right now. So as I'm speaking, I'm sending what's called a message. The message is coming to you, and what you're doing is you are encoding the message. So you are processing the message. Now, when you respond back to me, that's called feedback. Your response to what I'm saying is feedback. So that minimal thing that I just described is the communication model. Now, one of the things that exists on the outside of the communication model is called noise. So that could literally be noise, or it could be you're thinking about something else, you're stressed from something else, okay? And so when you realize that communication is just the model that I explained, then you realize what's actually important. What's actually important is trying your best to stay inside of the communication model. And so what does that mean? That means that at one point you're listening. So you need to own the role of being a listener. Both people, you need to own that. You can't just wait for your turn to talk. You can't cut me off. Why? Because you're actually cutting the communication model. Okay, so now I'll give you an example too. Me and my girl, we were talking this morning, and she was brought to tears by, she feels like she doesn't have enough alone time because she's with our son a lot. So I said to her, and this is something that men do, we do a lot. It took me a long time to learn this. We are often like, all right, cool. My girl's complaining about this, or she's crying about this. Cool. As soon as she gets done, I'm going to hit her with this solution and we're going to move forward. And then that usually doesn't work. She rejects the solution. And then in your head, you're like, bro, this was a great idea. You told me this. Okay, I heard you. And then, okay, I calculated this. If we do this, boom, boom, boom. And then your girl's like, you're not even listening. And then you're like, wait a minute, how am I not listening? I just gave you the best damn solution possible. You don't appreciate me. I'm going to just shut up. I'm just going to be quiet now, right? We've all done this, right? So what you got to model is this. My girl, she was crying. She got everything off her chest. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, okay. I'm listening, giving not what you're shaking your head right now. That's called nonverbal feedback. You're paying attention. You're engaged. I'm like, okay. So then I hit her with this question. I said, hey, keep in mind, we weren't arguing. Like the tone of voice wasn't high. We were just talking about something that was conflicted, but it was in a safe space. And I go, okay, I'm not 100% sure what you need right now. Do you need me to just hear you out and listen? Or do you want a practical solution? Because I do have that, but I don't need to give you that if that's not what you need right now. And so she kind of thought about it for a minute and she was like, well, if you don't hear where I'm coming from, I don't want your solution. So then in that moment, I was like, no, I 100% hear where you're coming from. Like, I get it. I was able to, and listening, that's a listening skill. That's called aligning and empathizing. So I aligned, like, I get it, understand. I empathize. You got to make sure that you're genuine when you empathize with someone. And then she was like, okay, well, what's the solution? And if you hear how I mimicked her voice, what was that? That was a soft, feminine voice. And as men, what do we want? We claim we want soft, feminine women, but what do we do? A lot of the times we make our women interact with us in the masculine way that our brothers would interact with us. The arguing, the screaming, who's better? LeBron is better. Nah, Kobe better. Nah, Mike got 6. And then we expect our women to interact with us. And then we say to our women, oh, I need you to be more feminine. How? How is she supposed to be more feminine when you're creating a masculine frame for her to exist in? So when I did this with my girl, she was like, yeah, okay, I'd like to know, what you got. And I was like, okay, cool. This is what I think you should do. And she's like, okay, and so she felt better now. Now her elevated emotion of crying was gone. She was in a space, she was seen, she was heard, she was aligned with, and I was able to give her a practical solution. So, is this completely easy? Yes, it's easy, but it's a choice. You have to choose that from basically the beginning. And if you didn't choose that from the beginning, then both people need to understand that, hey, you know what? We're choosing this now. We're choosing to make this space now. And I know also, I just want to say this. I speak from mostly a heteronormative frame of view. I'm a man, I'm dating a woman. And I recognize that there's, a lot of different types of people in the world who claim different things. And I just want to say that regardless of what you claim, this still works because this is just the generic communication model. So, if you're hearing this and you're like, well, I don't identify as a man or a woman, cool. Remove that, and just look at the model itself. It works for everyone.
And oh man, that is so funny, man, because we do that. We want to provide solutions. Like as soon as it hits us, it's like it's transcribed in our brains solution. And it's just like I got it. And that is so funny. I had a similar situation this weekend. And sometimes that's just not what the person needs. Sometimes they're not looking for a solution. Sometimes they're not even looking for a solution. Sometimes they just want to be heard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And they might want to hug after. They want to be able to vent. right? It's like, all right, they might have the solution themselves,
Right,
but they just
right.
need to get it out because it
Yep.
was a frustrating day. And we're sitting here like, nah, I got you. I got what you need. And they're sitting here like, man, this man don't got what I need right now.
Right. I need him to listen and shut up.
Yeah.
Right.
Like he's doing
You
too much.
just made me think about something too. Is like sometimes, okay, you come up with a solution for someone because you think it's going to help them. But you know what might actually help? For them to suffer a little bit and for them to figure it out on their own while you're just supporting them from a distance. Like we got to give up this Clark Kent superhero mentality and just realize like suffering is actually okay. Oh, your phone's about to get cut off. I could give you this $120. Or I could let you see what you're made of. Maybe now you go pick up an Uber shift on Saturday, or maybe you don't even work more. Maybe you go and cancel 6 subscriptions that you're subscribed to that you're not using. And now you have the money for your phone bill, or maybe you recognize, whatever the story may be. So there's power. And I say that, in the nicest way possible. There's power in letting people suffer.
And that's something that I've learned that recently. But I mean, for most of me, it was that complex that like, I have to come in and swoop in and take care of it and be everything for everyone. And then sometimes you're the one that's sometimes left with not much. Right. But you're right though. That is, oh man, that's so us, man. Another excerpt from your book that I really like, it says, allow yourself to be free from repeating stories over and over that do not serve you. These stories do nothing but bring you into a lower vibration, and they support the mindset and patterns that you don't want. They bring up the old emotions and trap you in a pattern. Respectfully, stop repeating these stories. Be mindful of the stories you tell yourself and others. Man, that is a mouthful. And as we go into this part of like the process of healing, like to me, this right here can help a lot of people because we do become sometimes the story that we tell ourselves, right? We can't lose the 40 pounds because I tell myself, oh, I can't get out there and lift the weight. So I can't get out there and run. Or this is just me. This is just my body type. My dad was big. My father was big. My mom was big. And my brother was big. Then we're just, and you start to tell yourself this story about yourself, or you tell yourself the story that somebody else said about you. If somebody told you, oh, like you're never going to be anything, now you adopt that, and now you starting to tell yourself that same story, man. And it's such a profound excerpt from your book. So when it comes to healing, how does this part of repeating these stories kind of coincide with the process of actually healing?
There needs to definitely be an acknowledgement that, we come from certain family systems and we develop certain attachment styles that help us form relationships in particular ways because we're seeking safety. Okay. I want to acknowledge that. And I want to acknowledge a particular mindset that I personally take. Everyone does not have this mindset, but I have this mindset that there's 2 people in the world, people who find excuses and people who find a way. And I've always been the type of person who I want to find a way. I want to find a way. I remember when I was in high school and I wanted to walk on to a Division I football team. I wanted to play Division I football because I wanted to play in the NFL. And I just remember my coach. I went and asked him. I said, "Hey, how come James?" James was one of my teammates. He was my best friend in high school. I said, "How come James gets letters from colleges every single day? And I don't get nothing. Like I don't get anything." And it was in that moment where my coach had an opportunity to, go a bunch of different ways with this vulnerable question that I asked him. And his response was, I'll never forget this. It was like 88 degrees. I was in Palatine, Illinois. And if you've ever been to Illinois in the summer, the humidity is very high. So, I got my pads on, I'm just sweating under the pads. And he goes, well, Sly, colleges don't want people like us. We're too short, we're too small, we're just not strong enough. For context, at the time, I was like 5'9", probably 155, lean,
Good days, good days.
155,
Yeah.
And I was like, huh. And when he said that, I didn't take it in as if he was talking to me. I took it in as if he was just talking about himself out loud. And I was almost offended, like, how dare you tell me what I'm capable of? And this is what I want people to understand when it comes to healing, that you went through what you went through. You experienced what you experienced. My invitation to you is to reclaim your wholeness, meaning acknowledge everything that you went through. Acknowledge it all. Acknowledge the grief. Allow your community to witness the grief. Allow people to witness your pain and your sorrow. And this has to be an and. Recognize that you have inherited strengths, that you have gifts, that you have skills, that there is something inside of you that a company is looking for, a partner is looking for, the world is looking for. Other people are looking for what you have. And it is your duty, it is your responsibility to practice, to hone your skills, to be in practice more of the things that you offer the world. Because your healing isn't just, well, this happened to me. Let me talk about it. It's, this happened to me. Talk about it. Show people, yeah, this happened to me. It's okay. And you have to pursue your passions. You have to pursue your gifts. You have to cultivate your voice. You have to find your purpose. I believe we have multiple purposes in life. You have to find your purposes. That's healing. Healing is saying, I'm going to be the most successful person I can be. Healing is saying, I'm going to be the best person that I can be. And then when you visualize yourself as that, multiply it by 10. And when you see that version of yourself, then it's like, okay, I got some work to do. Let's get started. That's how you heal. You see yourself as your best self, and you release everything else that keeps you in the dumps. Okay, my mom and dad, they were alcoholics. Great people, alcoholics. So I'm destined to be an alcoholic. No, I'm not destined to be that. Well, alcoholism runs in the family. It's hereditary. Okay, I have compassion for anyone who may be struggling with that. Understand that this is an addiction. I understand that. I'm speaking for me personally. When I go to college, I didn't drink. They say, why don't you drink? You're a football player. We got all these girls around. No, I don't drink. Why not? Because I don't want to. Why not? Because in my mind, when I drink, I'm going to become my parents. So I didn't drink. I turned 21. So at this point, I started college when I was 17. At this point, I'm in college 2 or 3 years now. I turned 21. Very first time I had a desire to drink. I went and told my friend, my best friend at the time, and his best friend at the time, I say, look, I'm very fearful to drink, but I know you guys are having a New Year's Eve party and I want to give it a try. I told them, I was vulnerable. I was honest. I said, look, I come from a family system of alcoholics, but I want to try to drink with you guys because you guys are fun. You guys are safe. And I see you guys drinking. I don't see bad things happening when you guys are drinking.
Right.
When I was growing up, I would see very bad things happening. Very, very, very bad things happening. But when I see you guys drink, I'm around you. You guys just have fun. You're just making fun of each other, playing 2K, playing Madden. There's cute girls around. I'm like, it looks like a good time.
Exactly.
So I said, can you guys keep me safe in this environment? They said, Sly, I got you. They said, I got you. So I had my very first drink. This was like my sophomore, junior year in college. And I'll never forget, remember my body heat up. When you drink a little too much, your body starts heating up. I never forget my body getting hot. And I like, if you remember, like, what was his name? Flame On from Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four,
like I felt like this fire just came over my body, and like I'm drinking. This is the first time I ever drank, and I'm like looking at my arms. I'm like feeling like they're on fire. I'm sweating. I'm like, man, what the hell is this? And then my head starts moving, and so I go ask my buddy. I never drank in high school or nothing like that. So I go ask my buddy. I'm like, hey man, I'm like, is this normal? Like, is this what drinking is? And he's like, yeah, like that's drinking. And then I just remember telling him, I'm like, man, I need to go get some tacos or something, bro, because this is not for me. This is not it. he's like, all right, we'll get you some tacos. So it was freezing in Illinois, and we went and walked to this kind of like in New York, you guys have the bodega. We have like strip malls in Illinois. So we like walked to the strip mall. The taco spot was open till like 2 or 3. So we're in there getting tacos. I'll never forget, like, the very first time I got drunk, it was this New Year's. And I remember eating tacos, and I remember telling myself, have fun with this. This is cool. This is okay. You're not going to be an alcoholic. And like, I'm eating tacos, claiming my future reality. And I'm just like, no, you're having fun. You can engage with this safely. You have control over this, right? So I say all of that to say that whatever the family system is, whatever the story is, whatever you lost, I think you have to grieve it. You have to grieve it. We don't grieve enough. You got to grieve it. You got to honor it. You got to bring it to your heart. You know, you got to have conversations about it. And then after that, you got to reclaim your power. You got to get busy. You got to get in the gym, and you got to start swimming. You got to chase your purpose. You got to drink water. You got to stay hydrated. You got to eat really good food. Why? Because doing all of these things brings you into a higher vibration. And I want people listening to this to be their absolute best self.
And wow, man, that's a funny story about tacos. Oh man, like you get hungry when you know, like especially when you drink a little bit, like you get really hungry, man. Some tacos and the bodegas, the sandwiches, like you know, it's they always hit at the right time, man.
Right.
But you're right about being your best self. I think we all have the power to be our best selves, if we put our minds to it. Right. And we do the right things and we put in the work, and I think you're right about grief. I think a lot of people don't understand grief. And we tend to just hide from grief. Right. And we mask it. Right. Or we'll drink it away, or if you do drugs, you drug it away, or you'll work it away. Right. You'll start working the 60, 70 hours a week on your business or your 9 to 5, and you'll mask it. So we really just put a mask right over all of the grief and say, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, but it's still living. It has rent. It pays rent right back here. And then there's going to be a trigger that's going to bring it right to the forefront of your mind. And it's going to just, right. Yeah. And that could, but the crazy thing is that could be years. 3 years, 4 years, 5. If you don't handle grief, and it's not that grief will go away, because there are certain things that with grief, we have to learn how to manage the grief, right? It just depends on what the situation is. It's like I said, my dad passed. Is that something I'm ever going to just get over? No, you manage it though. Like you manage the grief. You acknowledge the grief, like you said, you deal with it. And I don't know what your stance is on therapy. But for me, like I'm an advocate for therapy. If you need it, don't be afraid of it. I know a lot of us in the Black community, you grew up, that wasn't the thing. It says, what happens in this house stays in this house. But then what happens in this house stays in this house, and then it goes to the next house, and then the next house, and then the next house in each generation. Right. So for me, I say, if you need it, don't be afraid of going to get that help. Right. But if you need safe spaces, seek safe spaces, seek the groups, if it's a men's group, if it's a women's group, whatever it is that you think you feel comfortable in doing, that's going to get you to your best self. Get in the gym, drink water, like you said, meditate, stretch. I find that, as I get older, I'm not there yet, but as I get older, stretching is essential. Because I remember, I think it was last year, I rolled out of bed and caught an injury, and I was just like, time out. Like, wait a minute. Like, I just rolled out of bed. And I was like, well, how does this hurt? But that doesn't happen when you're in your 20s. You know what I'm saying? Like, you get up, cop up, and you're good, but stretch, and there's something really incredible about stretching. Like you said earlier, open up those hips and things like that. Like, that stuff feels incredible to me now, and it makes me feel a little older than I am, but it does. Right. But listen, I'm glad that you're on the right path, and I'm glad that people have access to books like this. Loving Yourself Properly. Again, please go pick that up. I know it's on Amazon, and it's also on your site, as well. And if people want to see your quotes, please follow this man. I mean, if you don't know who he is, I don't know how you don't know. I mean, a lot of people's on his social media, you know what I'm saying? He's in it because he's that incredible. And what's your social media handle?
Just my full name, Sylvester McNutt.
Simple
Yeah, you can
enough.
find me everywhere with that. I have the podcast and do
Mm-hmm.
videos on YouTube, and I
Mm-hmm.
tweet often. Like I'll just randomly jump on Twitter and just tweet my thoughts, and obviously
Mm-hmm.
on Instagram. So wherever you guys are at, I know there's a lot of distracting things on social media, but I try to make sure that my social media space is always inviting you back to you, and so I
Mm-hmm.
try to put up good videos and good quotes that just remind you to just live a beautiful life, work on your healing, keep good people in your corner, and just
Mm-hmm.
enjoy life, man. Just have fun.
It's true, and I can attest to that. Whenever I see a quote from Sylvester, it's like, man, like that was it's always something profound. It's always something positive, and it's always something that you can take with you, right? In the social media world where there's a lot of distractions, like you said, a lot of good things, but then there's also excuse me, there's also other things, what I'm saying,
Mhm.
that can distract you, and the news and social media can make you grieve. I mean, let's be honest. Like social
Yeah.
media, between the news of all of everything
it's
going on,
it's
right? It's crazy.
designed to make you sad. The apps are designed to make you sad because in one aspect they're designed to get you to compare yourself or to want
Mm-hmm.
what you see.
Mm-hmm.
And wanting what you see, if it's unattainable, is going to trigger sadness. And then on the other end, a lot of the headlines, see, we're not meant to digest world news. We, on a human level, are meant to digest I can never say this word. News from the community. I was going to say
Mm-hmm.
communal. There we go. Communal.
Mm-hmm.
There was a psychologist who said, his name is slipping my brain right now, but he said that we can typically digest between 100 to 130 people in our network, right? So when you think about it, you're following 700 people or 1,000 people, and then every single day you log in, your news feed is doing this, right? And you're getting, well, this happened in Korea, this happened in Texas, this happened in Fayetteville, this happened in New York. And it's like, hold on, why do you guys think that I can digest all this information? And so what happens? Because if you're an empathetic person, if you care, now you heard about this thing happened in Dallas, you're hurt. This thing happened in Israel, you're hurt. This thing happened in Toronto, you're hurt. And so you're just dealing with all this pain, but then social media itself is not a safe vessel for you to process the things that you're even going through, or the news. You're not even able to process it. Typically, let's say I bring you bad news. I'm like, hey, you know, I'm gonna, here's some bad news for you, right? As a friend, as a supporter, as a community member, I can sit with you in that bad news.
Mm-hmm.
I can sit with you in your grief. But social media or the news is just like, these 7 people got killed. Deal with it. And it's like, wait a minute. Or even worse, you'll go on there and you'll see a video of something happening, which will trigger you, especially if you grew up in a home where, let's say, there's violence or
Mm-hmm.
sexual abuse, and then you see a video of this. Then it's like, wait a minute, there was no even buffer for this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, imagine growing up in a home, or not just a home, but just imagine growing up being a victim of sexual abuse, and then you just come on Twitter to see inspirational quotes, and then all of a sudden you're saying, oh, well, this person is being charged with, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
why? This is a triggering world. So
Mm-hmm.
I love using social media because it connects me directly with people who may be interested in what I'm doing. But I caution everyone to develop healthy boundaries with social media, just to make sure they're not taking in things that are triggering them, making them sad, spending way too much time on there. The phones are beautiful now where you can actually put your limits right in there. I have them on my phone and I use them for business. I use those apps for business, and so when I get my trigger, hey, it's been 37 minutes. I pick random numbers like that. And so they'll be like, hey, it's been 37 minutes. Are you sure you want to keep using this? And then it's like, you know what? I'm going to delete this. Or like I was talking about Twitter, for example. This morning, I downloaded Twitter, put up a couple tweets. I deleted the app off my phone. Another good practice is I start my office hours every day from pretty much Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday. I'll go from 12 to 3. The beginning of my day is all about me. But 12 to 3, that's when I start my office hours. 12 to 3, my cell phone is off. I power it off. So that way, no matter what, I'm getting 3 hours of pure clarity. There's no distractions, you know? So that practice, I feel like, is very helpful for people too.
So, and I'm taking notes, you know, especially with social media, you know, because I think, you know, I do encourage people to unfollow accounts that can trigger you. Um, you know, sometimes we try to just follow accounts that can uplift and inspire you, right? And kind of avoid the negative things that are out there. But it is a good idea, like you said, to kind of put certain time limits and time restraints, you know, on your social media. So like you can get those reminders. Hey, it's been 30 minutes, man. Like, you sure you want to continue? You know,
Right.
and you know, and also that could be time that you could be working on yourself, you know, going to the gym or working on your business or whatever that means or what that looks like for you. That's something too, right? So you know, definitely you bring up a lot of incredible points in this whole show, and I'm sure that a lot of people will be blessed by this and learn a lot from it, man. And that's exactly why I wanted you to have you on the show, and I'm so appreciative of your time. I know that you got to get out of here. I've probably taken up a little more of your time, but I do appreciate you coming on a conversation of the heart. And thank you, and everybody, please follow him, follow Sylvester, buy his book, and take a look at the other. You know, I mean, he's a 9-time author, y'all. So he got 8 more. He got 8 more in the chamber. So you know, after you get this one, you know, take a look through his whole collection, and he's got bundles on his website. He's got different things set up on his website that you can have access to all of his content. Support him. You know what I'm saying? I know I'm going to. So Sylvester, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for doing this, man. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.